All right, folks. Again, welcome back to Manufacturing Month 2022. We're here today for cross-border e-commerce, digital strategy considerations for manufacturing. Today is Tuesday, October 18th, and it's 1 p.m. on the East Coast. Again, I'm Tony Sargis with the U.S. Commercial Service based in Middletown, Connecticut. And this is a part of our Manufacturing Month series of events. We've been hosting various briefings throughout the month of October, and we will continue that for the rest of the month. I believe we have about 2 or 3 sessions remaining, and we'll get that information to you on additional sessions shortly after today's presentation. Just a few housekeeping items before I turn it over to today's presenters. Please put any of your questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A box on the bottom. For most, it's on the bottom right hand corner of your screen, or you can send your questions directly in the chat and just send it to all panelists. Thank you. Again, I'm Tony Sargis, Senior Trade Specialist with the U.S. Commercial Service based out of Connecticut. I will be moderating today's discussion, and we have some really good experts on the topic of digital strategies. James Bledsoe with our eCommerce Solutions Center. He's the director of the eCommerce Solutions Center of the U.S. Commercial Service U.S. Strategy and Innovation Group. That's a long title, James. We're going to have to work on that. And then our good friends Matt Barden and Mark Manuel, co-founders of Industrial Marketing. And I'm going to ask them, before we begin the formal presentation, James, Matt, and Mark, to say a few words about who they are, what they do, and then we'll begin. James will begin the formal presentation. I'll turn it over to James first.
All right. Well, thanks for that intro, Tony. Briefly about me. Again, I am director of the eCommerce Solutions Center. Basically, what we do is work to bring digital understanding and literacy to our trade specialists who work with you, the small and medium-sized businesses out there, the manufacturers out there, to get you to understand how e-commerce and exports work. And as a part of that, I work with service providers just like Industrial Marketing on our e-commerce BSP. So today we've got Matt Barden and Mark Manuel. Matt, Mark?
Thanks. I'll take this one first. Nice to meet everyone. Matt Barden, co-founder of Industrial Marketing. You'll meet Mark in a minute. We've been at this for 8 years formally, working with small, medium, typically small and medium manufacturers, taking all the challenges of this digital transformation and helping them implement it, being that hand that actually not just says what to do, but take those steps with them. So excited to share more with you guys.
Great, Matt. Thank you. This is Mark Manuel. I'm really curious about the way that people buy in the industrial space, and it's really been very exciting as we get to understand the personas involved in that, and really understanding the challenges that the small and medium-sized companies have. So we're just excited to partner today and to share some insights with you. Thanks, James.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys.
Sure.
So we'll go ahead and get started then on our presentation. Matt and Mark will both be chiming in throughout it, and then we will have a nice discussion wrapping up. So today I'm going to talk to you all about digital strategies, how to get one going, basically what it looks like, and some resources that are available to you out there, in addition to service providers like Matt Barden and Mark at Industrial Marketing. So, scroll does not work. So as I progress through here, the main theme of this presentation, and basically every presentation that I do, is that the message is e-commerce is growing. It's always growing. It doesn't matter what the economy is doing. If sales in general are slumping, the e-commerce sales channels have been and are forecast to will continue to grow throughout the foreseeable future. E-commerce is here to stay. So what does this actually look like for a B2B business? Well, I'll quickly touch on this, and then we'll have Matt touch on this a little bit more in detail. He's got a few things on it. But basically, it's not as complicated as a lot of folks want to make it out to be. Here you've got the direct model right here, selling to the buyer, with the marketplace model, selling on Amazon, Alibaba, or niche marketplaces, or from your own website, you basically have that electronic component there as the middleman, serving that part there that would normally be served by human interaction. That's the basic gist of it. Matt, did you want to elaborate further on this?
Yeah, I love this slide because what is the digital transformation? What are we doing, particularly in manufacturing? How do we take technology to get more efficient, do more with less? That's always the key to business and success. And obviously the direct model has a lot of human interactions. And digitally transforming it is not just in B2B, we're never going to get to the exact point and click buy. There's a lot of customization. There's things that people do that are very multi-touch. But what we can use is technology to facilitate making those steps faster, easier. When you make it easier to do business with you, people tend to do more business with you. And so, speed to lead and speed to inquiry and getting the quotes out faster. These are all really important aspects. I think with e-commerce, that word, we think straight to, an Amazon, Shopify site. But I would encourage you to think bigger. One thing we see in CNC machining, it's a very traditional business, but we're starting to see where you can upload your SolidWorks file, instantly get a quote engine, get that back, and then maybe you want to communicate with the engineer on some different ways that you could modify that and actually get the price down even further. But those technology pieces that make your own website a sourcing platform makes it easier for these modern buyers and different engineers that might be working with you. And so they're not doing a point and click e-commerce buy every single time. But just think of all the different areas. And from a traditional B2B perspective on the sales side, just getting intent signals that said, this customer is interested in these different products, went to these pages, did these actions, and then doing your customer service follow-up, it better serves the customer. So these are all signals and pieces that come into automating and making you more efficient at getting to the market. So
Perfect, Matt. Thank you. And as
Sure.
a side note, I've actually worked with two manufacturing prototypers. That's their business
cool.
models to do prototypes. And yeah, e-commerce is actually helping them immensely because it's bringing their prototyping ability to the mass audiences that otherwise would not know about where they are in the hinterlands of, Missouri or Kansas, where they were. So it's definitely a field leveler for all kinds of manufacturers out there.
Sure.
So again, you heard me talk about the main gist of all my presentations is that e-commerce is growing. So here's a B2B forecast, the B2B online sales. We get these statistics from Statista. And here we can see a 17% growth forecast from where we are currently, 21, 22, going through 2025. So there's a lot of business being done through online sales, be that electronic interchange, EID, something of that nature, to regular online sales. And truthfully, a lot of the big B2B e-commerce figures seen going through here actually happen through the energy and oil industries, transferring of materials that way. But what are the main places that B2B manufacturers, the actual producers, are selling through? Well, aside from their own website, they've got third-party e-commerce solutions, perhaps a combination of online marketplaces. So the gist of this is it doesn't have to only be through your website. There can be other channels, sales channels that you utilize in addition to your website, not just exclusively your website. Here for the EU, we get a snapshot of what's going on for B2B there. We can see Sweden actually leading the B2B sales and the majority of which happen through their websites in the EU. From there on, we can see it goes down towards France and Portugal. So if you're looking for potential for online B2B sales for markets to sell to, these would be some good ones to look at based upon their activity in the B2B sales themselves. Often B2B sellers are resellers, or they use products, raw materials in the manufacture of their end product. And then what do those sales channels look like for those European manufacturers specifically? Well, again, it's through the direct sales representatives on their sales team. And then they have their distributors who may or may not be selling through a website. Fourth on here is their exact website. And that, I would say, is down to what Matt mentioned earlier, the fact that a lot of B2B don't actually sell directly from the website. So that's why we see it only at 8% here for e-commerce. That's what they're counting for whoever manufactures the brake pads and then sells it through their website, as opposed to the usual sales channels of partners, distributors, and sales representatives. I'm sorry, Matt, you had something you wanted to mention on this slide.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and it's important to stay holistic in how you view your markets and your opportunities. Certainly, the first thing we think about with B2B and online strategies is, obviously going after Google and getting new customers through acquisition. But it's also important to remember, especially a lot of you manufacturers might already work with a local branch or a local office, maybe work with a couple of the big primes, and facilitate having the technology to help you penetrate across, overseas to their European office. There's so much opportunity to work within a single buyer customer base. Take a, obviously automotive, aerospace, all these areas, they have European offices that maybe don't do business with you. And sometimes all these investments in making yourself more efficient is to penetrate those markets at a single buyer level. And then there's the, you can always add new to that. The biggest thing is, again, making it easier for your customers to do business with you. Think broad-based on all these technology advances that make it easier. Why we love Amazon. It's, we'll have a box tomorrow if I need it. How do you compete with that? You have to look at your business and say, man, how could we make our customers stay a little easier to work with us?
Exactly. And that we were actually talking about this yesterday, Matt and I, on MS Teams call ahead of time of this, and that is about the Amazon phenomenon, basically, where us as individual consumers get the experience of shopping on Amazon, that kind of experience, everything at the fingertips, being able to find information. And then when we go to our professional lives, working for business, doing B2B transactions, we then come to expect that same experience from other websites that we're doing these transactions on. And above all, it's very important to keep in mind that everyone, especially if you are B2B, everyone who comes to your website does so because it's their job to go to your website and procure from you. So make their jobs easier. And one way you can do that is through a simple digital strategy. Not enough businesses out there understand that just like a business strategy, you've got to have a digital strategy that ties in actually to your business strategy. And these digital strategies can vary in length and steps, but it's a good foundation here for these 5 steps for businesses to look out for when engaging in e-commerce sales. So first and foremost, you're a manufacturer. What are your digital objectives? You need to define that ahead of time. Are you going to be making sales from your website, or are you going to be informing to lead to a sale, calling out to the visitor to reach out to your sales team and follow up? That's something that you need to establish ahead of time before you go investing money into back-end technologies and developing your website. What's the primary purpose of it? Now, if it's a hybrid where you want to do both, then that's fine. But again, these simple steps need to be done. And in this step, you'll also want to do some sleuthing, digital sleuthing. What are your competitors doing? How are they online? Do they have a customer portal? Do they have international sales up on their website? Look around and see what's being done and what's worth copying, emulating. Second from that, but certainly not secondary to that, is performing some sort of search engine optimization on your website. How can you make a sale if your website does not show up or rank on the search engine results? That's the main driving force behind this. Your website is your primary sales tool in this online environment. And I hate to say it, but about 90% to probably close to 95% of all businesses out there, yourself as well. And sorry, that's my dog in the background. They don't have search engine optimization. They don't realize that their websites aren't performing like they thought they were. So whether or not you do a private sector search engine optimization or you do our website globalization review that I'll get to in a little bit, you want to make sure that your website is actually functioning, that there's nothing on there that would tell a search results page, don't include this on it. The third step is once you do some sort of search engine optimization to see what is working and more importantly, what is not working with your website, you address those back-end infrastructure issues, you remedy them, you fix them. You find a service provider like Industrial Marketing, Matt and Mark, and you have them work on what you identify in the SEO analysis of your website for the purpose of your website actually showing up to be there for that potential sale. Once your website is functioning, then you can focus on the strategic parts, choosing your e-commerce sales channels. How do you want to sell online? Do you want to have your website be the primary informing tool, or do you want to have a partner's website or the marketplace, niche industrial marketplace that you choose be part of that? Or do you want to allocate different percentages? Hey, we know that we get some sales through marketplace sales, other sales through our website, so we'll want to do a 50-50 mix there. That is deciding your e-commerce sales channel. And you also want to work closely with Tony Sargis here at the U.S. Commercial Service to understand where your markets are being sold internationally from an export perspective to then narrow down those channels. And then last, but certainly not least, understanding where your sales are coming from for those e-commerce sales channels depends completely on establishing e-commerce key performance indicators, KPIs, and looking at your website analytics. You can't understand what's going on if you don't know who's coming in the door of your website and what they're doing and for how long. So at any point during this, you want to look at three main areas of your website analytics: the site visitors, the dwell time, and the site country visitor or site visitor country of origin. And you want to keep an eye on those to help you make strategic decisions for your business that involve your online sales channels. So, are you even sure right now that your website is able to reach international audiences? Do you know that it works perfectly? Do you know how search bots see your website? Well, before we get to any of that, we've also got to take a look at and understand how consumers view your website. Is it internationalized? Basically, are there international sales welcome mat gestures on your website to where if I were to land on it from another country, would I know immediately that you're open for international sales and that you can sell and make this transaction happen to me? Furthermore, do I know immediately that your products, services are designed, manufactured in the USA, a stamp of quality around the world? So it behooves a lot of businesses to understand these 3 stages for attracting customers and what those mean exactly. A lot of you will understand localization, and that is because a lot of digital marketers out there make their money on localizing the website. But what is often overlooked is the lead in, the lead to of that localization, that justification. How do you know you have the sales in Japan to justify the expense of localizing your website in Japanese? That's why you go through these steps of internationalization, making sure your regular .com can be found anywhere. And then you make it abundantly clear, painfully clear that yes, we're open for international sales. You might even state that verbatim. We're open for international sales at the top of the headers of your websites. It's things that simple that you want to make sure are there. As you look at your website analytics and your sales, you'll then look to regionalize, which is to customize to a specific region. And then once you understand, hey, we are getting a lot of our sales from Japan, maybe 5% or more of our total website traffic is coming from Japan. That's our green light to localize, to then pay for somebody to translate our website, or devise some sort of translation software that can get everything for us. That's to purchase the .jp domain and then to pay somebody else or pay extra, the person who's maintaining your .com to maintain that .jp. And then anytime you've got changes, that also has to reflect across both URLs. So again, localization, the highest level of investment, is something that you only want to do when you know that you're going to get an ROI out of it. And you know you're going to get an ROI out of that through looking at your analytics and tracking the numbers. Matt, did you want to have a little follow-up on that?
Yeah, I think it's that's a great segue into, the first piece being, digital marketing and the word SEO, they definitely go hand in hand. When it comes to SEO overall, our approach over here is to first tackle the fundamentals. Because you're going to talk about the website audit. Those are your meat and potatoes. Make sure your website's fast. There's no broken links, and you start building the foundation from there. Next, you're going to want to really think, in this case, about your content strategy. For us, we have a process where we're looking at our near peer competitors that we want to benchmark against. What do they present themselves at? What are those call to actions? And just sometimes you have to slow down to hurry up, I guess you could say, and take the extra time to take that inventory and say, what is our real go to market that we want to present ourselves with? Do we mention all the services that we provide? I can't tell you how many customers, when we first start working with them, that do things that they don't get credit for. Maybe it's just because it's kind of part of the process, and codings, you have to do codings because we made the part, and they give you the story of why they don't. It's just everyone does codings, but we should call out all these value added services that they provide. Inventory, things that make it where a single source supplier can handle more of my things. It makes it easier for me as a buyer to make that decision to work with you. Part of that content strategy is starting to map out, to your point of localization. There's a strategy. If I want to show up for something, it has to say it on my website. It's kind of the most fundamental thing I talk about. And so the question is, do we want to show up for it? Do we want to invest in that? You start to tie that all together. The third part of SEO is kind of, I think a lot of people call it the black magic or the voodoo, and that's your backlink authority and all this digital PR. So we'll save that. But your foundation's really key and fundamental. It's most important. To your point, I thought you raised some excellent points. Here at Industrial Marketing, we use a ton of technology. When we say data-driven decisions, a good example of how you articulated is, I want to wait and see before the market tells me some data that says, Japan's worth investing. What does that look like on our side? We use some pretty heavy duty analytics we've built ourselves. We're able to see the companies that are on our site. So I can say, hey, these are really interesting companies. They're looking for the services we sell. that's a good step. Now, maybe my call to action is why I need to modify that. I love the analogy of a trade show. I'm an old sales manager. So I know when it's, a buyer came to my booth and they looked and then they just left, I can easily articulate the show worked. I got the people that I wanted to be in front of me, but now I have to work on my sales collateral, my presentation or other things to capture that customer. In the digital world, a buyer at a prime that we want to work with comes to my site and then leaves. We don't just say, "Up, internet doesn't work." There's more work to be done. We have to dig in deeper. And so using that analytics then leads into other things. We can see data points on the markets. COVID was really interesting when the world seemed like it was shutting down. But we had confidence moving into the markets with our various customers because we could see the whiplash and obviously automotive took it on the chin at the beginning. But other areas started to expand because they had all this data coming in. I was able to confidently say that the business is still happening. In fact, it's up, and it was interesting. Obviously, it's been a big digital push since then. So taking that data and then making decisions based on it to say I should invest in something, that's more reality. The idea of let's just get it all done, let's do everything, never works well. But and the biggest thing with customers, I think it's really important. I think it's crucial to remember that most of our customers are smaller businesses. They run a company. I'm a business owner myself, and doing taxes, doing customer service, sales, all these hats you have to wear. It's important when you go down this path that you understand it at an executive level and how your team should, some KPIs that they should work towards. But you also have to make sure that you're not just trying to career change into marketing. Make sure you have good support. If it's someone in-house that can help you with those things, a lot of people have their administrative team start to take on some of these roles in training them. That's how we start to see that development into this. It does take time, but there's ways to navigate it. It's certainly fruitful when you do.
Very much, very much. And that's something actually that we can help uh, show to our clients, at least begin to show when we get into the gap analysis service that I'll be touching on here in a minute. Speaking of which, when we do this service, there's some very frequent, in fact, I would say every time we do the service, the same issues show up for all businesses. And that doesn't matter if they are retail, an architecture firm, they make organic nut butters, or they do industrial fly ash catchers. They all have these same issues, just different respective to their websites. The first one set of issues is the internationalization best practices. Basically, the international sales welcome mat gestures. A lot of our clients don't even indicate that they do international sales. Something as fundamental as an international inquiries tab up at the top of the menu. Also, other indicators such as making sure it's made in the USA across everything. And then also connecting their online presence, be that with social media, trade shows. There's a disconnect there where they are, in my opinion, really losing out on existing momentum that they're doing there simply because I don't know, they don't know to capitalize on it. But that's something that we point out when we're looking at the digital strategy with our clients and help them to work towards improving. On the flip side of that, outside of the customer experience, the actual mechanical issues, the nuts and bolts that we frequently see issues are center around the metadata issues. Basically, it's missing content. There's not enough keywords there, or there's data fields like a title, a page title, that is important for a search bot to understand what's going on the page that needs to be filled out. But the client doesn't know about that until we do a crawl with a tool to actually see that that area is not filled out. Another issue that I've seen time and time again with our manufacturing clients, and especially ones with either YouTube, Vimeo, or other media representation of their processes and products, is that they're missing out on the keywords for those offsite videos and offsite postings. They aren't linking back to their website, so that all this work exists in a vacuum on YouTube or Vimeo without the association back to their brand. So this is something that we take a look at, both of these mechanical issues, more or less mechanical issues, to make sure that the client understands what's going on for a full picture. And Matt, you had something you wanted to add on this as well.
Yeah, bigger picture, it's all about, the certainly putting the words in there so that it checks the box on the auditor, but the nuance of it is the right words, the intent behind it, to your point. Good examples, especially in B2C, everyone sees the big numbers, everyone's looking for it as an example, like serrated blades. I had a manufacturer that does serrated blades, custom build them. They have off the shelf ones. And, certainly early on, we were getting a lot of inquiries. We did really well for the word serrated blades. And what you see in the inquiries is a lot of people with a one-off knife. There's a ton of volume for it that wanted a serrated blade sharpened or whatnot. And the way that we fix that, in a lot of cases, they're getting the wrong inquiries, and they're saying, how do we fix that? It's by appending things like, serrated blade manufacturer, serrated blade supplier, distributor. And we want to look at the data that's attached to those keywords, not the big, shiny, lots of searches number. And when we get really focused on that, all of a sudden those inquiries represent different people. Someone that's looking for a supplier tends to look for larger quantities of those things. And so I think with the inventory and strategy of keywords and having that, then associate those videos, it's really good to take inventory and understand your business and what that, we call it ICP, ideal customer profile. That looks like, can we get an inquiry? What do they look like? What's that engineer? What's that buyer, an MRO? What are they looking for when they engage on a website? So we articulate that.
Yes, that is 100% right. And I got to piggyback on what you said with the keywords. That's something in our gap analysis I actually touch on with the clients, and I'm glad to hear you echo that.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was a little bit out on the fringe there for saying, if you are a knife manufacturer, you don't want to focus on the keyword knife, even though it's
Right.
getting 10,000 people on average per month using that keyword. You want to focus on serrated knife because that's what you make. And the reason is conversion rates. You'll have all sorts of people looking for cake knives, plastic knives, stuff that's not yours under the regular knife, as opposed to serrated knife, which would be your product. So there's a lot more people looking for your product with that niche keyword. Excellent. So with that, how does a search engine work? And I'm sorry, I want to go through this because this is the same delivery I give in the services that we deliver, but then I also kind of made the animation, so I'm quite proud of my PowerPoint skills, as corny as they are. Oh man, oh, the animation doesn't work.
That's
Dun,
why I
dun,
was asking you,
dun.
James, not to interrupt, but there was nothing on the slide, so I was like, I think it was just a blanket question. So, but when we
Okay.
send the PowerPoint, the PDF out, we'll make sure that the animation's in there or the actual
So,
slides.
well, actually, so because I made it, the animation is white blocks that I figured out how to make them move when you click through it.
There
So
you
it
go.
reveals what's behind it. I can try to share my desktop to go through this animation here. Bear with me for one moment here as I open up the PowerPoint on my end. All right, and getting to that slide. And of course, the server wants to take forever to contact. So we'll just proceed on. So Let me see if, okay, there we go. It's going now. There you are. All right. This is kind of like the highlight of my day. So guys, bear with me. There we go. So sharing our screen. Yes, there we go. So how does a search engine work? Well, we've got the World Wide Web here, and on it, we've got search engines. Yeah, Google, Yahoo, Ask, MSN, Bing, Yandex in Russia, Baidu in China, Naver in South Korea. Search engines are all basically the same. First of all, they're websites, just like yours, but they create web crawlers to go out and find information for these search engines. Well, actually, truth be told, Google creates the web crawler, the search bot, and then Yahoo, Ask, MSN, and Bing all copy it and slightly tweak that algorithm. But this web crawler, it's a robot. It is a robot with robot's instructions minus the physical body. And so this web crawler is designed by Google to go out and index everything on the internet. And its instructions are find A, B, and C, but not X, Y, and Z. And when you do on those websites, fill out your index card. So when you go to the search results, you're actually getting this search bot's index card of what was on that website. So when you do search engine optimization, you're doing nothing more than making sure this robot that is programmed to find A, B, and C finds A, B, and C on your website. Furthermore, it makes sure that X, Y, and Z metadata issues aren't on your website. That's the whole gist of SEO, making sure the robot can find information. And again, 95% of our clients who do this service are missing the first line from this. They're missing A, they're missing B. And so the point of search engine optimization is to fill that in for the search bot for search results. Now, obviously, it gets a little bit more complicated with screen formatting sizes and things like images. This web crawler, it's a robot. It doesn't actually have eyes. And so it only knows this as an image entity. The only way that this web crawler knows this is a Western Douglas fir softwood tree used in the building industry is because I tell it that it is a Western Douglas fir softwood tree used in the building industry when I give the picture a summary or a title when I upload it to the image library. Sometimes if you're not working in Drupal like us, you actually get an image alt text field to fill out that tells you that's what it is. But everything for search engine optimization has to be written down because this robot does not see. So if it is not in text on your website, you don't do it and you don't sell it. It is quite simple as that. All right. Stop sharing.
I thought that was beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think I have been doing this too long where all that actually made sense, but I could see an outsider being like, what the heck is all these things? So it's really interesting, but the beauty of it is when things are so simple and they happen, it feels easy, but there's a lot of little things that happen that are considerations, so I think that highlighted all the little details that go into things to think about.
Thank you. That's like my pride and joy presentation during the deliveries,
Sure.
is giving that little spiel. So speaking of the deliveries, so this is the delivery that I'm talking about of the actual gap analysis service. So this is something that I designed for our organization and is simply a gap analysis of your website. It's just like when you take your car to the mechanic shop and you plug it into that machine and it tells you everything that's wrong and the O2 sensors and your blinker fluid's low and you need more muffler bearings. That's what this does. It looks at your website, basically holds up a mirror and allows you to see what a Google search bot sees, or more importantly, doesn't see on your website. And we also give recommendations, international sales recommendations as far as customizations for your personal website, customer portals, international landing pages, making it clear that products are made in the USA, all sorts of recommendations to help you make more sales. But again, we're not fixing anything. What we're doing is raising to your attention the issues and then referring you to our e-commerce business service provider directory, from which industrial marketing is listed. And on there, in conjunction with your STEP grant funds that I think Connecticut has, you have now an understanding of the areas that need fixing, STEP grant funds to fix them, and now a list of service providers based upon what they do who can fix those issues for you. So we can get right down to the brass tacks of why we are involved for exports to see you grow your overseas sales. So here's some resources as I wrap up here that are available to everyone out there. As you are working on your own website and keywords and backlinks and want to understand more about search engine optimization, we actually have our own online blog that I curate with various trade topics on it that we have on trade.gov, the e-commerce frontline library. You can go there and look at articles that are published quarterly. I actually have one coming up here shortly on the Thailand e-commerce market forecast to add to this. I just recently put up USMCA updates as well as a forecast for B2C e-commerce. That's not reflected in this slide. But then also, while we deliver the gap analysis and say, hey, clients, you need more keywords, you don't have enough for search bots, they say, what am I supposed to do? Here's our practice what we preach examples. Create pages like this. Just like this right here, understanding e-commerce sales transactions. I wrote that article for my clients, you businesses. Who would be searching out there how to do e-commerce sales transactions, and then peppering each of these resources with backlinks and keywords to help boost trade.gov's online score while also marketing to you at the same time. So again, if you want to learn in a very easy sense, basically how the page should be structured, what it should look like, here we have the e-commerce frontline library as a learning example, and also it has some pretty good information in it. We also have market research available to you on trade.gov/e-commerce. If you scroll down the page, you'll see our e-commerce resource guide. If you're familiar with the country commercial guides that we publish through the US embassies throughout 140 countries around the world, we've actually aggregated the e-commerce sections out of each one of those guides. And as of this year, I personally have been giving Statista e-commerce market research data to all 140 of our country posts overseas to make their e-commerce sections even better this year. So please do check up in on that. I think they will be published after the new year, if I'm not mistaken. So if you want some up-to-date information around the globe, here would be a good place to start. And then another resource here, digital policy alert. This is something that our organization had been trying to wrap our brains around through various digital attaché programs. When lo and behold, I stumbled upon a private sector relationship between the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland and this digital policy alert tracker, where they are tracking digital policy from around the world. Now, this is something you can do on your own, and I'll tell you, it is somewhat complicated, but Matt and Mark at Industrial Marketing actually have a service that does that for you to where you don't have to do that yourself. Did you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that. This is one of those very fast evolving areas of digital marketing. One thing having done this long enough, the old days you could put up a pretty basic website, be in business, and there you go. The sophistication and regulatory environment is changing very fast. Good example, obviously GDPR is something, if you're going to do any business in Europe, if you look back to Google and how it impacts things, you know, the privacy policy is always, it started to have an impact on the quality score of your website, the cost of ads, things like that. And in these privacy policy, you know, GDPR in the US, CPRA, we call it Termageddon, actually. There's a lot of acronyms. In my world, it's easier. We partner with a company called Citrio. They're built for you know, smaller businesses as well as enterprise to help them navigate. So basically, you have two aspects of it. On the marketing side or on your front end, you have to give people a way to opt out. GDPR, CPPA, that's the California one. And so integrating that opt out in your policy where they can then submit their information, say, hey, don't market to me, don't sell my information, all these things. You're checking the box. These are regulatory check boxes. And companies like Citrio and there's others that their job is to stay on top of these things to make sure that we at our end of it know the box has been checked. And so I can say 25 million and greater for California is the first impact of companies doing business in California. GDPR has its own guidelines. Probably within a year or two, this is going to be a federal policy that impacts almost every single company doing business. So it's one of those bigger pushes, I think, in the trend line of, you know, bringing a website from just a regular website to a truly business managed website and meeting these higher standards. That's something to look out for.
Yes, agreed. And the digital policies, as you mentioned, they are constantly evolving.
Yep.
When you just hear of one like the GDPR or the California one popping up, then there's three others that are in planned works that I end up hearing about on my end, where I go, okay, so there's more coming. So yes, please do, and especially if you are on the B2B side doing business in Europe, you definitely want to understand, have some sort of business commitment to understanding the regulation as a CYA measure to make sure that you don't get stung by these digital policy issues that are out there.
Check the box is what I like to think. Just make sure you take care
Yes.
of it. Check the box, move on with business, and keep going.
I'll tell you on a side, and I know this is recorded, so I don't take this as legal advice, but the majority of that digital policy out there for consumer information, as I take to understand it, is pretty much out there to punish those who are negligent enough to refuse to check the box in the request to do so. So long as you try and make a modicum of effort in that direction, everybody should be okay. So I don't want businesses being frightened away from doing business in the EU. But again, it's still an important thing to pay attention to.
Just to add more to it, because I find it a fascinating topic. So first of all, you're right. The one thing you have to think about is, you know, there's an evolution of getting more aggressive, whether it's sales, marketing tactics, and everything in between. And certainly, as you squeeze down, you start emailing the heck out of people. Most manufacturers don't do these type of things, you know, in the scale and veracity that a lot of people do. But certainly, that's one thing that can tee off some people. One of the more interesting aspects of these, you know, like whether it's GDPR or CCPA, um, is the HR impact. California, an employee of a company can actually request that information on their own files, and any of the data communications within the company potentially can come up in that search as well. So it's going to have far-reaching aspects in a business beyond. It's a really interesting where it goes. I've been following it pretty closely, and you know, so it's good right now because we're so far ahead of it that you can take the little bites at the apple and be ready for these things. So you already have best practice built in, and you just don't have to worry about those processes coming later. I think it's going to impact smaller businesses probably 5 years from now,
Mhm.
3, 4, 5. It certainly always starts at the big and then comes downhill. But it's a really interesting topic that I think is you're going to see a lot more of it.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, you get me thinking that I should actually reach out to you after this webinar and
Hmm.
see about getting co-authorship on an e-commerce frontline article on those emerging policies. I think that'd
Yeah.
be a great topic to cover, kind of understanding what's on the horizon coming up for everybody in a general sense.
Yeah, it just
Very good
keeps
stuff.
raising the bar of, thing. And I think in the end it makes the whole internet better, on one aspect. The way that we can, protect privacy, keep what we have, we have some really cool things the internet's brought us, so we have to protect that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Another resource here pointing out, because we are the International Trade Administration, U.S. Commercial Service, we have a market diversification tool. So if you have an HS number for your product, sorry, services, the NAICS codes do not work on this tool. You can find other markets to potentially sell to based off of export products and the numbers that are being recorded through census figures at the ports. So it's very useful resource there. And again, this is all on trade.gov/ecommerce. Additional programs and resources that we also have at the U.S. Commercial Service. These are ones that I'm actually a part of by way of just the way our organization is structured. We have our Global Diversity Export Initiative that is available there to help underserved communities across the U.S., be they minority-based, rural-based, you name it. We're here to help. And so if you are a business that needs assistance in anything, let us know. We're here to help you. We are more than eager to bend over backwards for you. And that's, again, to include women's owned businesses. There's a lot of initiatives out there. As a matter of fact, I think there's a webinar going on today here in Seattle, where I am, where we have our Secretary of Commerce on to talk about financing for women owned businesses. And then we also have a lot of rural business resources there through our Rural Export Center. One of which I am very keen on is the RAISE, Rural America's Intelligence Service. It's a RAISE program where they use our gap analysis service, but then also provide a lot of targeted market research to help you understand where your industrial products can be sold worldwide, and then the connections, the matchmaking services along with to make sure that happens. So a lot of good information out there and a lot of initiatives that our organization is more than happy to get involved in to help you sell more overseas. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. Do we have questions at all?
All right, James, Matt, thank you so much. We do have a couple questions. Let me cut this recording and then we'll go to the questions.